Good morning. My name is Carrie Gottfried. I'm a junior at Corvallis High, and generally I actually enjoy public speaking, although it takes me a bit to get warmed up and my hands might be a little shaky. Speaking in front of this congregation is one of my favorite things to do because you all are my second family. After all, it takes a Unitarian Universalist village to raise a Unitarian Universalist child. And because you are my village, I'm going to speak to you frankly. Because you are my family, I'm going to speak to you with love. Churches often feel like families. That's because churches and families are two of the only multi-generational spaces we have left. Think about it. Where else do you get to have people of all ages come together to share something sacred? One of the sacred things we share in this space is the ritual of bridging. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, bridging signifies the transition from one life stage to another. Generally, when we talk about bridging, we're talking about the specific transition between youth and young adult. This annual youth-led service usually recognizes that aspect of our multi-generational space. Because we have no bridgers in our group this year, I wanted to talk not about the act of bridging, but the before and after. After years of watching older friends leave, I've grown to dread the bridging ceremony. Don't get me wrong, the senioritis is already setting in. I'm so ready to leave high school, but I'm not ready to leave Unitarian Universalism, because for many UUs, leaving high school means leaving Unitarian Universalism. That's because in most UU spaces, bridging means leaving a large, supportive youth community and entering a small group of young adults that are 5 to 10 years older. A small number of colleges have UU ministry groups, but more likely than not, my only option will be finding a way to get to the nearest Unitarian Universalist church. That might mean a 10-minute walk, but it could just as easily be a half-hour commute, assuming I find a method of transportation that will fit within my budget. And once I get to church, will it be worth it? As much as I love the traditional Sunday service, it's nothing like Unitarian Universalist youth worship. I can't accurately describe what it's like, but picture 100 high schoolers from all over the Pacific Northwest circled around a chalice singing Blue Boat Home, and it will give you an idea. The drawbacks I mentioned don't even take into account missing out on fun college activities, catching up on sleep or schoolwork, or navigating the stressful interactions that are a UU social hour. This took you a sec. This is why many recently bridged young adults aren't in our churches. With the struggles that UU young adults face, it's no wonder that many of them stop attending church. However, this isn't just bad for the young adults, it's bad for Unitarian Universalism. First of all, organized religion in America is declining, but membership in some denominations, like Unitarian Universalism, is declining at a slower rate than others, which is great, but most of the people who are joining are new to Unitarian Universalism. In fact, while most denominations report that around half their members were raised in that denomination, for Unitarian Universalism, that number is 12.5%. That means just 1 out of every 8 people in a congregation was raised UU. That is a staggering statistic compared to other religions. Let's see if it plays out here. Please raise your hand if you were raised Unitarian Universalist or Unitarian Universalist. Okay, you guys don't count. But we love you. But it's not surprising that this number is around the same as the national average. Unitarian Universalism isn't a well-known religion, so many people who might have found it earlier only discovered it once they were on their own. And 12.5% in and of itself isn't a bad number. It could mean that there are so many people eager to join our churches that there simply aren't enough raised UUs to keep up. However aspirational that may be, it couldn't be farther from the truth. Since an average of 12.5% of our adult members nationally are raised as Unitarian Universalists, based off of our national growth population, around 147 raised UUs bridge and stay in our churches every year. However, the Young Adult Office at the Unitarian Universalist Association estimates that around 4,000 youth bridge annually from religious education programs. If our retention rate was similar to that of other denominations, there would be 2,000 raised UUs joining UU churches every year. Not 147, 2,000. And the number 147 scares me. In our district, the Pacific Northwest, there are about 300 youth in YRUU programs. Assuming that a quarter of them bridge every year, less than 10 of them will continue attending a UU church. And I don't want to leave this church or Unitarian Universalism. None of us do. But the tight, supportive community we are engulfed with during years of RE and YRUU disappears as soon as we bridge. For those of us who move away after high school, not only are we met with hundreds of new faces who aren't particularly interested in getting to know a random 18-year-old, but we have no support system, no weekly check-ins, no advisor that brings us apples and muffins every Sunday. Our Unitarian Universalist village is gone. Even people who stay with the same church have to adjust to life as just another member, and the well-meaning congregants who say, "I remember when you were in the toddler room," and just can't reconcile that with respecting that person as an adult. Bridging is a lot more than the ceremony. It's the entirety before and after that makes the difference. In some districts, they call the bridging ceremony cliffing, because instead of the bridge you might envision, from youth to young adult, it's a cliff that just drops off. And if that sounds painful, that's because it is. How many young adults are there to bridge into? Another show of hands. Who here is a young adult, that is, an adult under the age of 35? Yes. Well, you all are awesome. And let's try and get a little closer to our bridgers' ages. Who here is an adult under 25? I see you. We see you. But coming from a vibrant youth group with dedicated advisors and indeed the wider youth community, it's a culture shock. And this isn't the fault of our young adults or their programming. I've been to the YA group here at the fellowship, and it's a dedicated time for around 5 young adults to meet and share in conversation. The people there are wonderful and welcoming, but it's hard to feel supported or visible in a congregation of over 70 times the size of that group. In my ideal world, we would include youth in every aspect of church, not just the hour on Sunday mornings. I want to see youth attending chalice circles, workshops, service, and social justice activities, not with their families or youth group, but because they are welcomed and actively invited to join in as individuals. At coffee hour, I want to see youth talking to everyone instead of just amongst themselves, because an adult has initiated a conversation with them about something besides, where do you want to go to college? I want to see youth engaged in the business of our congregation, voting at the annual meeting, and maybe someday on the board. In 9th grade, after half a year of youth group, I was starting to get frustrated with this church. Although I had spent years with this family, I didn't feel connected. Instead of starting my Sundays with the whole congregation, then transitioning to the RE wing after the time for all ages, we spent the entire hour in the YRUU room. It didn't help that the group was small, and sometimes there were more advisors than youth in the room. I wasn't a child anymore, and my village was stifling. The change between freshman year and right now, as I finish my junior year, has been truly life-changing. And I mean it. My life has changed. I've gone from someone who didn't even list Unitarian Universalism as a major part of my life to someone who's considering a career in it. And that change happened because I got involved. At the end of freshman year, after attending just one district conference, I knew that I had to be a part of the UU youth community. 2 years later, I'm here. I'm the chair of our district board, which I've served on for 2 years. I've been on district conference staff 4 times. I was on staff for Youth Caucus at Regional Assembly, and in just over a week, I'm traveling to Kansas City to serve as a junior dean for Youth Caucus at General Assembly. And I'm not telling you all of this to brag. I'm just telling you because it's a whole side of me that many of you don't know. I love Unitarian Universalism, and I love our multi-generational community. But even though I'm so involved, there's still a lot that I can't do. I'm only 17, so officially I'm not a member of this church. I can't serve as a delegate at Regional or General Assembly. Adults, as members, get to vote and have a say in congregational life. Of course, this privilege can't be taken lightly. There's a responsibility that goes along with that. Dues and donations are needed to keep the lights on. While youth might not have the means to financially support the fellowship, that doesn't mean that we can't contribute in other ways. Youth deserve to have a seat at the table. Earlier, my friends and I shared some of our gifts with you. Everyone has gifts that can be utilized, from helping with the younger RE programs, to baking things for social hour, to leading a workshop. But right now, how can we as a congregation support youth and young adults? How can we make them part of the village instead of the child? First, understand what we are. One of the last spaces where people of different ages, races, genders, sexualities, abilities, and every identity can gather together in intentional community. This isn't just a safe space. For many, it's a brave space. A space where not only is everyone accepted as who they are, but encouraged to grow into who they are meant to be. Second, recognize the privileges that separate us. The majority of adults have money, reliable transportation, and independence. For most of you, it's pretty easy to find a ride to church every morning or scrounge up some loose bills for the offering. But for us, that's not the case. You also have a lot more experience than us, and that is super cool. You have suffered through high school, you have had family problems, and you have worried about the future. You've all learned from your mistakes, and anything you can share with us would be much appreciated. Many of us are navigating our teenage years with trepidation, and at least some of us don't have a trusted adult to sort things through with. Remember what I said about being a family? It comes in here. One of my advisors for Youth Caucus, Jenica Davis-Hockett, told me that youth should have at least 3 adults in their life that they can trust besides their parents or guardians. Will you be those adults? Third, realize that youth are the future of this community. Some of us here found Unitarian Universalism on our own, but for most of us, it's because our parents brought us, in some cases kicking and screaming. When I was younger, of course, my parents took me to church with them, but when I entered middle school, it became my decision to attend. I decided I'd much rather spend my Sunday morning sleeping in. However, after a year, my parents changed their minds and told me I had to start going to church again. I was furious. Mom and Dad, thank you. That was the best thing you've ever made me do. Of course, I don't recommend forcing your kids to attend anything they're ideologically opposed to, but an hour once a week or even once every other week isn't a huge sacrifice if all they're missing is an extra hour of sleep. Youth are the future of this community. Your kid might not be the next minister or RE director or office manager, but then again, they might be. I don't think my parents ever thought when they dragged me to RE in 7th grade that I'd eventually be speaking up here or leading the National Youth Assembly. Where is our next generation of Unitarian Universalists? The answer lies here and here, in each of your hearts and homes. Finally, despite the privilege you hold, treat us with the inherent worth and dignity each of us deserve. Although there are legal and practical differences, we are all thoughtful, dedicated individuals with opinions of our own. Having conversations with us doesn't have to be hard. You don't have to resort to cliches about high schoolers, plans for the future, or any of the basic things you might ask younger people in your life about. We are all on the same level, all members of this wonderful, accepting church. If we were at the service, ask us what we liked or disliked about it. Ask us what you would ask any other person about, what we're interested in. There's bound to be some similarities. For some of us, it might be harder to find common ground, but keep trying. I'll get you started. I love to talk about podcasts, politics, and Harry Potter. So if you're interested in any of those things, I'm a great person to talk to. Forrest and Hannah are our theater kids. Dylan, Natalie, and Layla like Dungeons and Dragons, and Molly and Gabe are in band. If you have any preconceptions about high schoolers, just talk to any two of us, and everything you thought will go out the window, unless it's that we act like adults but have squeakier voices. In all seriousness, most of us are a few years away from leaving this church. I'll be graduating from Corvallis High in just 362 days. Not that I'm counting. But I hope when I'm back here in a year, giving my bridging speech, I'll be saying something different. I hope I'll be talking about the wonderful connections I've witnessed between youth and adults. I hope my friends will come up here and talk about how they've researched the nearest UU church and figured out how they're going to get there. I hope the youth who bridged a few years ago and still live nearby come back one day and feel so welcome that they come back again and again and again. 362 days isn't a lot of time for that change to happen, but we all have to start someday. And today is that day. Thank you.